Hi, this is Shinos. So in the last video, we learned about the names of the tenses. Let's do a recap of that one. That was simple present, simple past, simple future, present continuous, past continuous, future continuous, present perfect, past perfect, future perfect, present perfect continuous, past perfect continuous, and future perfect continuous. So these were the names of the tenses, and like we talked about in the last video, it was very helpful to remember the names of the tenses. And in this video, we're going to talk about how to construct sentences using different verbs and what will be the structure of it, and moreover, what will be the functions of using these tenses. And this also we're going to use using the same hand gestures we talked about in the last video. I suggest to go back and watch that video first and come back to the second video, because in the first one we talked about the names of it in detail and the actions that we use with our fingers and hands and our hand to demonstrate the names of the tenses. Okay, so let's get started. So we're going to use the phrase speak English throughout the 12 tenses. So that's the phrase that I'm going to use to introduce these 12 tenses by using the hand gestures. Okay, so throughout the video, what you need to do is just repeat what I'm saying and do what I'm doing. That's all what you need to do. Every day, yesterday, tomorrow. Every day, yesterday, tomorrow. So those are the time expressions of simple present, simple past, and simple future. So let's speak that with the phrases. I speak English every day. I spoke English yesterday. I will speak English tomorrow. Let me say that one more time. I speak English every day. I spoke English yesterday. I will speak English tomorrow. So these are the three tenses: simple present, simple past, and simple future. Let us talk about the next three tenses, which are present continuous, past continuous, and future continuous. So let's use the same phrases for these three tenses again. Now what we're going to do is we're going to add the time expressions or the functions of these three tenses into our practice. So the next three tenses are present continuous, past continuous, and future continuous. So let's talk about the time expressions first before we get into the construction of the sentences. Okay, so repeat what I do for these three tenses and then speak with me after that. Now, this time, yesterday, this time, tomorrow. Let me say that again. Now, this time, yesterday, this time, tomorrow. Now we're going to practice the phrases with the time expressions. So, I am speaking English now. Go down. I was speaking English this time yesterday. I will be speaking English this time tomorrow. The reason why we move our fingers or move our hand is because it's a continuous action, and that's why we move our hand in all these three tenses, because it's continuous action: present continuous, past continuous, and future continuous. Okay, now we're going to talk about the next three tenses, which are present perfect, past perfect, and future perfect. So this is the action for the perfect tenses, and that's why we used it. Now let's talk about the example sentences. So we know that the third part, the V3 or the past participle structure of speak is spoken. So we'll use that structure here. Again, before we get into the construction of the sentences, we'll talk about the time expression. So let's do the time expression for the perfect tenses. Many times before you came here, by next week. So one more time. Many times before you came here and by next week. So now we're going to add the sentences with the structure of it, and then you will understand what we were talking about here. So it's I have spoken English many times. I had spoken English before you came here, and I will have spoken English by next week. So we use present perfect tense to talk about how many times we have done an activity, or to talk about an experience, or to talk about something that we did, but we don't want to mention the time. So in these circumstances we use present tense, but here we are using the frequency of the actions that we have done, and that's present perfect, and we said many times here. So now let's go down and talk about the past perfect. So we said I had spoken English before you came here. So why did we add the sentence before you came here? Well, the reason is we use the present perfect tense when we talk about two actions that took place in the past, and one action happened before the other. So for the extreme first action happened in the story, or when we explain about that one, we use the past perfect tense, and that's why we said I had spoken English before you came. Two actions happened here. I spoke English, you came. So among these two sentences, the first action that happened was I spoke English, and then you came. So to demonstrate this example, to express this meaning, we used past perfect, and that's why we said I had spoken English before you came here. So now we finished present perfect and past perfect. So the present perfect was I have spoken English many times, and the past perfect was I had spoken English before you came here. Now let's talk about future perfect. The future perfect tense is I will have spoken English by next week. Now what does it mean by next week? Well, by next week means within next week. We have not done that yet. We are going to do it, and we have 1 week time. So by the end of next week, I'm going to finish this activity, and the activity is speaking English. So what I'm trying to say is I have not finished learning English, or I can't actually speak English, but by next week I will have spoken English. So it's kind of it's kind of a guarantee that you give somebody that you will finish doing an activity before this particular time. So that's when we use the future perfect. Okay, let's do the present perfect, past perfect, and future perfect one more time. So first of all, the time expression was many times before you came here by next week. So let's do the sentences one more time. I have spoken English many times. I had spoken English before you came here. I will have spoken English by next week. Now by next week can also be by next year, by next month, by the time you come, by tomorrow, by next month. So it can vary, it can change. Okay, so now let's talk about the last three tenses, which are present perfect continuous, past perfect continuous, and future perfect continuous. Now again, like we said, the reason why we move this thumb is because it's a continuous action. Even though these are perfect tenses, we add the motion because these are perfect continuous tenses, and that's why we add the motion. And also you can remember that longer when you differentiate the tenses that you learn in the present, in the perfect aspect as well. So again, I'm going to introduce 3 time expressions for present perfect continuous, past perfect continuous, and also future perfect continuous tenses, so that you can remember the functions of these 3 tenses as well. So the time expressions are these days, when I stayed in the UK, in the coming 2 years. One more time. These days, when I stayed in the UK, in the coming 2 years. Now let's try the sentences. I have been speaking English these days. I had been speaking English when I stayed in the UK. I will have been speaking English in the coming 2 years. Now what does these sentences mean? Let's revise those sentences again. So the first thing, or the present perfect continuous tense, the sentence was I have been speaking English these days. Now the function of present perfect continuous is when you talk about a habit that you started recently. Any habit, any continuous activity that you started recently, you can use present perfect continuous. So for example, in this scenario, in this situation, we said, I have been speaking English these days. That means you have picked up a habit of speaking English these days. So you might have started that maybe a week ago, a month ago, but before that you hadn't done that. And that's when we use the present perfect continuous tense, recently started habit. The time expression is these days. You can also say lately, recently, phrases like that. I have been speaking English these days. Now you have to move your thumb when you say speaking, that ing form of the verb. So I have been, keep it still, and then move your thumb when you say speaking English. So you can say, I have been speaking English these days. Now when did you start it? You started that recently. Did you used to do that before that? No, you started that recently. In other words, it's a recently started habit. So you can say, I have been reading a good book these days. I have been practicing for IELTS these days. I have been watching a lot of videos these days. Any expressions like that. Now if you want, you can also add for how long you have been doing that. So you can say, I have been speaking English for 2 months. That means you started that 2 months ago and still you're speaking it. So if you really want to emphasize the time, or you mention the time when you started that, and how long has it been now, so you can say for 1 month, for 2 weeks, etc. But basically it's not necessary if you don't mean to mention the duration. Or in other words, you can simply say, I have been speaking English lately, or these days, nowadays, etc. So let's go ahead and talk about the past perfect continuous. And the time expression was when I stayed in the UK. Alright. So imagine you went to the UK and you had to stay there for, let's say, for 2 months, for 3 months. And you were forced to speak English. And after your stay there for 2 months, you came back to India, you came back to your place, you came back to your house, to your home country. So during those 2 months period, you spoke English. For how long? 2 months. So this is what you're trying to say now. So that's the function of past perfect continuous, and you can say, I had been speaking English when I stayed in the UK. Are you speaking English now? No, you have stopped communicating English with the people on the streets, etc. But when you were in the UK, you had to use English, you had to speak English whenever you went out and met people from the stores or from the grocery stores, from literally anywhere. So you had been speaking English for 2 months when you stayed, for 3 months when you stayed in the UK. So basically, this sentence means what we have explained now. In other words, the function of past perfect continuous tense is an activity that started in the past and continued for some time and finished in the past itself. Now think about the activities that you did in the past. You started that, and that was a continuous activity for some time, maybe 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, or even weeks, and finished in the past itself. Now you don't have that habit, and that's the function of past perfect continuous. So let's do the present perfect continuous and past perfect continuous one more time. I have been speaking English these days. I had been speaking English when I stayed in the UK. Now the future perfect continuous tense. I will have been speaking English in the coming 2 years. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, it means, let me take you the story one more time. So you have been to UK, remember, and you came back to your place. And next time you are going to visit, let's say, USA, the United States of America. And again, like the experience you have had from the UK, you are going to speak, or you're going to need to speak English from the United States as well. And you have a plan to stay there for 2 years, but you are not in the United States at the moment. You are in your home country at the moment, but you're planning to go there and you're going to stay for 2 years. So you're kind of like thinking and predicting, not actually predicting, but you're kind of what can I say, thinking of that plan before you actually do that. So you're going to speak English in the United States for 2 years, and you're going to come back from the United States to your place. So in the future, in the coming 2 years, you're going to be speaking English in the United States, and you're going to come back. So for how long are you going to speak English? For 2 years. Have you started that? Have you started speaking English now? No, you haven't. You're going to go to United States, and after you land in the United States, you're going to speak English. You're going to speak English for 2 years, and then you're going to come back. And that's the function of future perfect continuous. So the sentence is, I will have been speaking English in the coming 2 years. Now you can add details like in the United States from 2012 to 2020, or any other time expressions as you wish. So that basically concludes the functions and the sentences of the tenses. So we'll just do a quick recap. So let's start from the beginning. Simple present, simple past, simple future, present continuous, past continuous, future continuous, present perfect, past perfect, future perfect, present perfect continuous, past perfect continuous, and future perfect continuous. And the phrases: I speak English every day, I spoke English yesterday, I will speak English tomorrow. I'm speaking English now. I was speaking English this time yesterday. I will be speaking English this time tomorrow. I have spoken English many times. I had spoken English before you came here. I will have spoken English by next week. Now the last three. I have been speaking English these days. I had been speaking English when I stayed in the UK. I will have been speaking English in the coming 2 years. Now, I know that this may sound a bit difficult and awkward to do this, and also to remember the names of the tenses, remember the structures and do that. But I suggest you to watch this video repeatedly and do with the actions, speak the sentences with the actions. So based on the neuro-linguistic programming, it says when you do something, you learn a lot. So it is actually true in the case of learning English as well. In fact, learning the tenses, or literally anything that has to do with learning. So this method, I guess, will work for everybody who can do this. So it doesn't matter whether you're a very small kid, or you are an adult, or you're above 50 or 60 years of age. It doesn't matter, as long as you can repeat these sentences and understand the science behind the motions, and you can learn that. You can also teach it to your friends, your family members, or your beloved ones. Anybody who are interested, basically. If you're a teacher who's watching this video, you can use this method to teach your students as well. So the great benefit of using this method to learn and also to teach is that it's very interesting, because it includes the movements and also and all the actions and gestures. Plus they can remember it longer, or you can remember it longer, and also your students can remember it longer. And it's very easy to remember as well. So the differences between all these tenses, present perfect and simple past, and other tenses is actually very clear, and it's an easy method to actually learn. So I hope this method helps. Please subscribe for more videos so that you get you can get notified when I make and upload a new video. So click that subscribe button if you haven't subscribed yet. I'll be posting more videos, like one video a week maybe. And so that's it for now, and we'll see in the next one.